Hello there. So, if you saw my last video, if you haven't seen it, go and check that out before you check this one out. I was in the midst of selling everything I own and moving into this tiny 10-foot caravan for the foreseeable future, and just wanting to document my adventures of this in case you are someone who's also been through this and needs a bit of camaraderie, or someone who hasn't done this yet and just wants another perspective of what that process has been like. So, if we haven't met each other before, my name's Liz. I'm just here to candidly share my adventures and my reflections along the way. So, about 12 months ago, a quick recap, I made a decision that I didn't want to rent anymore and I wanted to move into my tiny caravan with my two little dogs who will likely show up behind me in just a moment. Um, and over the last few months, I've been starting to transition, selling everything I own and moving out. Of course, it all happens at once, right at the end. And the last few weeks of my life have been absolute chaos, particularly the last 2 weeks have been crazy. But I'm happy to say it is literally 7 days today that I have moved into my caravan full time. And I am currently in a local caravan park in my hometown. So we've made it. And I just thought I might document like what the last few weeks have been like, what's been challenging about this transition, but also a few things that have made this transition a little bit easier. So what's been challenging? Well, we all know, from the outset, we know that, selling everything you own and moving into a tiny space is obviously going to be a little bit challenging, a little bit stressful. That's not really a huge surprise. But I guess there were some surprising things about the added stress that comes with getting rid of everything you own. So I made the decision to get rid of everything I own because I didn't want to put anything in storage. I didn't want to pay for storage, for one. I don't see myself moving back into a rental for the foreseeable future. Like, I think my goal is to stay in this caravan, until I save up enough money to put a deposit down on a bit of land or a little house or something. So for me, it didn't make a lot of sense to put stuff in storage. I do have my beautiful best mate who offered, she has a room under her house that she was like, I can store whatever I want down there. I decided to still get rid of basically everything because I thought, like, I can either get rid of it now or I can get rid of it from a year from now. And in fact, I kind of need the money. Moving into a caravan, there's quite a few extra costs involved, particularly if you're like me and you want to be largely remote or like off grid. So the costs associated with that means that I did need some extra cash, and getting rid of my furniture and belongings was a good way to do that. But it's been really hard. So, for example, organizing everything, 3 years of my life, trying to sell things on Facebook Marketplace at the same time and still working full time. I don't recommend doing that, by the way. Don't move into a tiny space while you're still working full time. Look, if I'm proof that it can be done, then great. But like, if you can avoid that, you should do that. I'm saving up all of my annual leave because I have a big adventure in mind. So that's why I've made the sacrifice to not take leave now. But if I had my time again, would I have allowed myself a few days off? Yeah, probably. The other thing that kind of surprised me about this whole process was the grief, actually. I experienced quite a lot of grief over the last few weeks, like just kind of like, might sound a bit silly, but like mourning the loss of living in this little place. Like, it was a rental. I'm not like personally attached to it that much, but like in terms of just a connection to the place, I did. For me, the house was pretty special. It was a tiny little 2-bedroom house. Plenty of things wrong with it, but I loved it because it was my first time I've ever lived in by myself, and that was really special for me. I'm someone who's either, bless you, that's Mo if you haven't met him before. Nice butt shot. Um, yeah, I've only ever lived with partners. I've lived on college when I was at university, and I've lived with housemates. I've never actually, and family when I was growing up, obviously. I've never lived by myself before, and that's a massive privilege to be able to afford to live in a home by yourself. Unfortunately, it was something that I couldn't sustain. It was something that I ended up, that was a factor in terms of me moving out of the place, because I knew that I couldn't sustainably keep paying rent by myself and have any sort of form of savings. But for the 3 years that it lasted, I was really grateful to have the chance to live by myself. I think it's been so therapeutic being able to live by myself, particularly as someone who is a recovering people pleaser. It was so good to live in a way that it's like, well, who am I outside of the influence of everyone else? What routine do I actually like? You know, what foods do I like? What decorations do I like? What kind of furniture do I like? I finally got to make those decisions for myself. And it's been so helpful in my self development to do that. And finally, I had a home set up that was exactly what I wanted. I'll include a couple of little snippets of how I had it. And it was really me. And it's the first time I've ever had a little space that really felt like me. And so over the last few weeks, watching myself kind of destroy that, destroy the peace and the little sanctuary that I've developed for myself, and selling off things that I'd grown a bit of an attachment to. So most of my furniture was secondhand or older stuff that I'd hung on to, but I had just a handful of things that I bought brand new for the very first time. So I bought this like green velvet couch. It's my first piece of furniture, brand new piece of furniture I've ever bought, and it was glorious. It was like my dream piece of furniture and had like many a movie night on there, like chilling out with the dogs, movie nights with friends, sitting with a big old bowl of pasta, you know, on there, just with a glass of wine, just having a little cozy evening in. I had little fairy lights up. It was so lovely. And yeah, it was sad to lose it. I also really loved the area that I was living in. I was very fortunate that I lived really close by to the river, and I've got some really great memories of that place, you know, walking the dogs there almost every day. And I trained for my first marathon along that river, you know, and it was really, really beautiful there. And it felt sad to lose that. And I allowed that. I allowed myself to grieve that, like not sort of talk myself out of it or convince myself that it was silly to think that way. I think, yeah, it meant a lot to live there, and it's okay to feel a little sad about that, even though I have something really exciting ahead. And even though it's been my choice to leave that place, I kind of felt a little bit pushed out because they increased the rent to the extent where I couldn't really sustainably afford it. So it was a little bit of a push, but still largely my choice to move out of there. And yeah, it's okay to feel sad about that. Speaking of like disturbing your own peace, I think what I'd sort of not anticipated was that it's once you start selling off all your stuff, living in the house isn't comfortable anymore. You know, I sold the couch, so I had nowhere to sit, like even just to sit down after a massive day of like packing, organizing, selling things, cleaning things. There's nowhere comfy to sit down and relax anymore. I had the van, obviously, but it wasn't fully set up yet. And yeah, it was sort of, I was sort of half living in the house and half living in the van. And it was just like a bit sort of uncomfy situation. Also, the van was like parked in the carport, so it's not the like comfiest space to be living in, you know. And then I sold all my dining chairs, so there was nowhere comfortable for me to sit and eat dinner anymore. And even just like losing all your furniture, like I underestimated how much you need surfaces for things, like just having benches, desks, tables, just to put your stuff on to organize them. I had a couple of camping tables and I used those to their fullest extent. But yeah, it was just kind of a weird situation where I was like, oh, all my stuff is like on the floor now. And I'm like rummaging through things to, you know, I'd pack things and then realized I still needed it for something. And so that was like, yeah, a bit uncomfy. So it's just, I think it was just the accumulation of stress built up over a number of weeks, like just living in discomfort. At times, I'll be honest, I was kind of relieved to be going to work just to get away from that space for like 8 hours a day, just to be, yeah, just to be in a space that just wasn't so chaotic looking. So yeah, it was a lot. And I don't say this to have a whinge about it or anything. Again, this was all my choice, but it's just sort of to not sugarcoat the fact that yeah, it's exciting, but it's also pretty intense, and the transition is pretty massive. And then there was the move into the caravan. So, as I said, last Saturday, exactly a week from today, I left the rental to move into this caravan park full time for the next 2 months until I hit the road on my next big adventure, which I'll be sharing with you very shortly. And it's been a transition, like once again. So it's like the chaos of like getting rid of everything you own to move into a tiny space, and then it's actually living in the tiny space as well. So it's just like just new things to think about. Like at the moment I haven't got my toilet set up. I do have a toilet and shower in my van, which is awesome. I haven't used them yet, so it means that I'm like walking to the toilet block every day, which isn't too far away, but it's still like the comfort of just like being able to just go to a toilet in a house, it is different. Washing clothes, washing your own clothes if you don't want to have to pay for a washing machine, like that's a bit more effort, a bit more energy. Doing dishes as well when you don't have a double sink, again, bit more energy. There's a bit more energy, a bit more organization that comes into those everyday things that you kind of take for granted living in a house. The other thing is like, and van lifers will know this, is it's like every time you need to use some sort of surface in here, I have to move stuff off another surface to get to that surface and move it onto something else. And then when I need to use that thing, then I move everything off that thing and move it onto the other thing. So this is like everything on all my benches is like nomadic. Everything moves all the time, which is fine. That's just the way that it goes. It's pretty hot outside, so I'm not really using the outdoor area heaps at the moment. I do have an awning that I've ordered, so maybe that'll make my outdoor area a little bit more accessible once that gets in. But yeah, it's just accommodating to a smaller space. It's the fact that my floor is dirty almost every day. I do have, and I'll be sharing with you a couple of things that have helped my transition. But like one of them, I'll tell you right now, is using like a little air blower thing. It has like a rechargeable battery that I attach onto it, and I just zip the dust straight out the front door. That actually does help quite a lot. I do have a little compact vacuum cleaner as well, but yeah, the little air blower works really quite well. What I will say though is that I've adapted to living in this tiny space much better than I thought. I did worry of like the moment I move in here, like, am I going to regret it? Am I going to find it really uncomfortable? But I haven't. I've actually kind of loved it. I have loved living in here. It's quite cozy. And I think that's due to some of the little changes that I've made to the interior space that have made it a bit more comfy as well. So speaking of that, like let's talk about some of the changes that I've made that have helped this transition, at least over the last week. Things will continue to improve, but there were some things that I decided to prioritize straight away that would help me get a bit comfier in this space a bit quicker. Because I've been, as I mentioned, it's been a bit of a stressful living situation for weeks on end now. And I did decide that I needed to make it a priority to make this living space as comfortable as possible, just to sort of help me relax and chill out after so many weeks of working really hard. Both at my regular job, like I've been going through a really like intense period at work as well. So yeah, finding a relaxation space, and that's Snoopy if you haven't met him before, has been also a priority. So some of the things that I've been doing is in terms of like storage. So a couple of I will show you my storage things when I do my little tour, but I just in recent days I decided to get packing cubes for my clothes. So I did have my little wardrobe that's just here and it's got 3 drawers, and those drawers were just like I had like little boxes with all my clothes in it. And I just found like it just used up the whole space. And I thought, and also just the daily rummaging. I'm rummaging through these boxes every day to find anything, and everything's on top of each other, and it's quite hard to find it. And I thought, oh, I've never been a packing cubes person. Whenever I've gone on trips, which hasn't been very frequently, I just literally just dump everything into a suitcase and go. I've never been a packing cubes person. I decided to invest in these packing cubes because I thought everything has its place then, and anything I need, I just grab that bag out. I grab the tops bag when I need tops, dresses, etc. So I've just got a bunch of these packing cubes that are in the cupboard now. And the best thing about it is it's compacted everything. So now I only need to use one shelf for my clothes, and the other 2 shelves I can now use for storage, because I was finding it a bit stressful because I had my plates and cups in the same cupboard that my pantry was in, and everything was just on top of each other, and I have to like move pantry items out of the way just to access my plates, and that was just adding an extra time and a bit of stress. So now making my clothes cupboard a bit more compact, I've actually been able to put all of my plates and bowls and a few appliances into this cupboard. Now it leaves my pantry to just be a pantry and everything's there. So that's been great. I think just buying a couple little things to just make it a bit more comfy. The other thing is I've got my little plants from my house. So I've taken a few things with me from my house that I really loved that just sort of remind me of the space that I was in. I also have like a little rug that I bought really cheap that I sort of cut to size to fit on the floor of my caravan, and it kind of reminds me of the pattern of the rug that I used to have in my old house. I've got a couple of extra little plants in the space as well, which take up bench space, but for me it's sort of it's worth it for the space that's taken up for something that's quite comfortable. The other thing I've got is, and this was a little housewarming present from my dad, is I've got some fairy lights as well. And they've just helped make it a bit cozy and comfy. The other thing is I've got some artwork as well. So I've got this piece of artwork that was in my house, as well as another artwork that I painted, which I'll put up on the screen for you. But this was like a paint and sip that I did. It was actually of a combi van originally, but I decided to paint over it and do a silhouette of my van instead. So it was like an actual picture of my van at sunset on a beach. So I've got that in my little kitchen area, and I really quite like that. So just those couple of little extra touches, I think making sure that I had a really comfortable bed before I moved in was really important. I did trial the bed for several weeks prior to moving into the van. Like I spent a couple of nights in the van just trialing things, and I found out that my bed was absolutely this hippie. My bed was absolutely not comfortable. Like the cushions that it comes with, because it's one of those ones that converts from a lounge into a bed. Those cushions were not comfortable at all. So I've ended up going with like my little foam mattress that I had in my car when I was doing car camping, as well as a quite a it was like $300 mattress, memory foam mattress topper on the top, and I finally got a bed solution that works really, really well. And also prioritizing my self-care a little bit as well, like as much as I could, like even if there was lots of things to do, I still like gave myself the afternoon off. Like after work yesterday, I decided to just put the air conditioner on. I have an air conditioner in the van. I'm on a pipe powered site, so I can use the air conditioner. Put the air conditioner on because it is already starting to get a little warm here in Queensland. And then I put some movies on, and the dogs and I just like chilled on the couch slash bed watching movies for the evening, just absolutely chilling out. I think also prioritizing setting up my kitchen and pantry in a way where I could start to cook some of the comfortable, like the lovely meals that I love to cook. Again, that gives me a sense of like normalcy and comfort, that it reminds me of the life that I used to have in the house, that just makes things a little bit better. Another thing that I did was I actually went for a run for the first time in about 2 months the other day, and that felt great. Like where I'm living, like I said, I'm across the road from the beach, and there's a beautiful path along the beach, quite a decent sized one, and it felt great to finally be able to run again and run in somewhere really pretty as well. So I think picking this caravan park was a really good choice, because although I miss running along the river, I still have an equally beautiful place to run in, and that helped with the transition a little bit too. The other thing I did was just like a little bit bougie and probably not relatable to everybody, but it's like, and I mean, for you, it's like pick the thing that creates the same result, I guess. So for me, I actually took the time to like put a little face mask on this morning and just chill with my coffee, watching a few YouTube videos of other van lifers. I think like watching other people that are going through the same thing as you is also comforting. And yeah, I just spent the morning just having a bit of a chilled one, hanging out with the dogs, just with my little face mask on, having a cuppa before I get into the busyness of the day again. I think that's been really helpful. And trying to remind myself, being a bit, again, this may not be relatable to everybody, but just being a little gentle with myself, of like giving myself some time and some space to recognize the fact that I am going through a massive transition right now. And it is okay to not be in the best mood the whole time. It is okay to not be eating the healthiest. So I've finally started eating better this last couple of days, because I've finally got my like fridge situation and my pantry situation sorted out. I'm not buying takeaways, but like while I was clearing out the house, it was a solid like 3 weeks there where I was like cleaning and selling everything, that I was getting takeaway like every couple of days, which is really unusual for me and wasn't making me feel very good. But I forgave myself for it. I let myself off the hook. So I'm like, look, I'm going through a lot right now. I don't have any of my belongings right now. It's okay. And I'll get back on track with healthier habits again soon. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be like super grateful about everything as well. It's like, don't you dare, be sad. Don't you dare be like complaining about anything, because it's such a privilege to be able to do this, to live in a caravan full time. Like that is like the dream for a lot of people. I'm not traveling around at all at the moment, but it still is a massive privilege to be able to do this. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself to be happy and be, I don't know, in a certain mood. And the moment that I just allowed myself to be like, it's okay to be stressed out. It's okay to not feel relaxed. It's okay to not be your best self right now. You're going through a lot. And I think that actually helped me calm down, and it actually did improve my mood a bit, just to accept myself the way that I am and what I'm going through right now. And that helped a lot too. Overall, how am I feeling about moving into a caravan so far? Do I think it's been a really good decision? I mean, I'm biased in this, because I'm stubborn and I'm going to just be all in about every decision I make anyway. But so far, yeah, so far it's felt really natural being here. It's a strange situation, like living in a caravan and then going to my office job during the day and then coming back to the caravan every day. It's like half holidaying, half office jobbing at the same time. It's a bit of a bizarre situation. I do have my dad here camping on my campsite with me, and so he's watching over the dogs for me while I go to work every day. So that's been helpful. But yeah, in spite of it being a little bit weird, it feels really natural to be here. It feels really great being in the caravan. I love, like I said, I've transitioned to living in a tiny space surprisingly well and have been really enjoying it. And every week, I think it gets a little better because every week I learn how to live in this space a little better. I learn how to make things a little bit more comfortable or a little bit more efficient, or it's just a letting go process. Like I'm letting go and I'm just getting used to things every week that goes by and getting back into a bit of a sense of normalcy, or figuring out this new routine that I have here that can help me feel a bit more comfortable. So far so good. I think it's been awesome. Cooking for myself has just been such a comfort. For me, like I love cooking so much, and being able to finally be able to cook in this little space for the last couple of days has been so nice. Like cooking myself up like a comfortable little pasta dish, or making myself some sushi, having a glass of wine with it, or not, but just chilling and enjoying a lovely meal on my comfy little couch setup that I've got here now has been really great. What I also would say is what I really like is I immediately have a bit more presence with my life. So every day I have to clean up. You know, when you live in a house, there's this temptation to be able to leave your dishes on the sink for like a day or two. In this tiny space, I have to wash the dishes every night. And it's not many, but it kind of pushes me to do it. If you're someone who naturally just gets on top of things, like that's fine. But if you're someone who procrastinates a little bit like I do, living in a tiny space has actually really pushed me to keep a tidier space. Like it's actually tidier here than it was when I was living in a house. I mean, particularly the last few weeks, but like in general as well. I've also been outside so much more than I was when I was living in a house because it's just early morning, late afternoon when it's a bit cooler. I just sit in my camp chair out the front of the van, and just under this tree, listening to birds, like hearing birds when you wake up every morning. I wasn't doing that when I was living in the house. The boys are getting walked like several times a day, every day. So they're outside going for walks much more frequently than they were before. Like every morning we walk across the road to the beach, which is lovely. So there's been some changes that have been really good. And like for example, sometimes I'll wash my dishes at the campsite kitchen instead of my own kitchen because it's just a bit more space to spread out and be able to wash things. And I meet really lovely people there, you know, like people who are from overseas even, who've been traveling around Australia and just hearing their stories. So that part's been a new experience that's made this transition really quite fun. So that's my experiences so far. That's been my thoughts on transitioning into a tiny living space, transitioning into full time caravan life over the last week. I will continue to keep you updated. I have plenty of ideas for upcoming videos, and I will also keep you posted on my exciting plans. In November, everything changes again, and I can't wait to share that with you. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope it's been enjoyable to listen to, and I will see you next time.